I am running out of creative ways to start off these videos. I certainly had fun this month, whenever I wasn't working on homework at least. So let's just get right onto the list.
I mean, I think either way, if you're in the military, you like getting, effed by Uncle Sam.
Independence Day Resurgence. I remember watching this when it first came out, and back then I just thought it was okay. You know, one of those movies you watch, don't really mind, but you don't think about after you watch it. However, since it is the 30th anniversary of the original movie, I figured it was about time I rewatched this sequel. Now, going into this movie, my expectations certainly weren't high. However, this movie exceeded my already low expectations as it is the hottest of hot messes. First problem? There are way too many characters in this movie, and very few of them are interesting. Jake, Pat, and Dylan are all boring characters. Jake's friend is just a stereotypical simp and very awkward. The military guy and the stupid intern character are completely underdeveloped and unnecessary to the story itself, since they don't do much and don't have much relatable backstory. And then the prince from Bullet Train and Phoebe from Ghostbusters just appear out of nowhere. And then there's some guys in a submarine who just happen to know the weak spot of the alien ship. And then there's a completely different alien race which just serves as sequel bait. And putting all of these numerous characters aside, the original characters are completely bastardized. Whitmore has been reduced to a bumbling oaf, and Hiller isn't even present as he was killed in a spaceship crash of all things. And worst of all, Russell isn't even mentioned. I'm more annoyed by this after watching the deleted scenes in the original movie involving Russell, which makes the original movie even better. And aside from that, this movie is a complete rehash of the original film, to the point that it's practically winking to the audience with the callbacks, such as when Whitmore just runs into the containment cell and then instantly gets attacked by the alien who slams him up against the window just to get out some exposition. However, it's not all bad. This is far from the worst movie I've seen this year. Julian and Oaken are just as funny as they were in the original film, even if the latter character's arc makes literally no sense considering he's been in a coma for 20 years, and the movie itself is hilariously bad. Overall, I think it goes without saying, some movies just should not get sequels.
Marriage is what brings us together today.
Supergirl 1984. I figured that I should watch the original Supergirl movie in preparation for the one released this year. Now, I've heard this movie was bad. Like among the worst DC movies ever made bad. However, after watching it, I think it's a very mixed bag. I like the scenes of Kara trying to fit in at school, as these scenes tie into the previous Superman movies. Also, I like the way Kara is portrayed, even if I prefer her portrayal in James Gunn's adaptation. And most comically, the priest from The Princess Bride appears here. On the flip side, however, the scenes with Selena are so freaking goofy. There is no explanation for how Selena got these powers she has, and her villainous plan doesn't even fit the movie she's in, as she's just trying to win some random guy's affection with her powers, instead of, trying to take over the world or look for Supergirl. And speaking of the random guy, the subplot with Ethan is way too forced, which makes this movie feel like two movies combined into one. All of this balances the movie out in the middle as just okay.
I bloody knew it! Bloody Walter. Yes, and I want you to make awful sequels to my classic films for 50 years after I die. But you're already dead. Oops. Well, then you'd better get on with it then.
The Liberty Story. I randomly discovered this film on YouTube, and since it was available on Disney+, I decided to give it a watch. This film is more of a documentary than an actual movie. One segment shows the story of the Boston Tea Party, and then the other shows the story of a mouse named Amos, who gave Ben Franklin all of his ideas. Throughout all this, Walt Disney makes a pretty charming host. The Ben and Me segment is funny since Sterling Holloway is killing it behind the mic. Lastly, it's funny that Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson look like Mr. Smee and Captain Hook, respectively, with Jefferson even being voiced by Hans Conried. There's nothing much else to talk about with this movie, though.
Apparently in this place, the residents are outnumbered 50-1. For every single resident, there's 50,000 police officers.
E.T. Since I'd already watched one of Spielberg's Alien movies this month, I figured I should watch another. That and it was one of the movies I was able to watch on a plane. And while not great, this is certainly better than Close Encounters of the Third Kind. A very boring movie indeed. Elliot's siblings were all funny. The scientists are somehow both intimidating and silly, such as a scene where they investigate some dropped Reese's Pieces and then decide to eat them. And lastly, the climax is great. However, Elliot gets a little annoying in the climax as he's just screaming, "Don't hurt him! Don't do this!" And it gets grating fast. E.T. himself isn't too memorable, and a common occurrence for alien movies, the government agents don't have much characterization.
You imagine that? George Washington cheating?
Why not? He claimed he would never tell a lie, never said anything about cheating.
Young Washington. Similarly to King of Kings, I was expecting this to be the weakest of the three movies I saw in theaters this month. And while it is, it's certainly better than King of Kings, and certainly better than Animal Farm. The one by Angel Studios, that is. I like how the story focuses on George Washington's bond with his brother, as I remember learning about that when I visited Mount Vernon as a kid. Kelsey Grammer's character is fun, the action scenes are good enough, and lastly, Andy Serkis is in this movie. However, I feel the movie should have touched more on how Washington eventually rebelled against the British. Also, the movie ends with a QR code. Typical Angel Studios. Once again, people, do not scan those. It's not a good idea.
Damn it, Junior! We can't get another one. There's only one copy. Now we're owned by the damn British.
National Treasure. It's been a long time since I watched this movie, but since it was 4th of July month, I decided to rewatch the film. And this movie feels like a slightly worse version of The Mummy or Indiana Jones. Granted, Ben and Riley are both funny protagonists. There were a lot of familiar actors, and I like Ben and Abby's dynamic. However, I really don't like that the movie portrays Washington and company as Masons. Something about that feels very, very wrong. But then again, this is Disney who made this film, so... Also, the movie does a bad job establishing how Ian is any worse of a person than Ben. Yes, he's stealing it in more active methods, but at the same time, Ben is doing the exact same thing he's accusing Ian of doing.
Hello? Yes, 911? Something's wrong with me. I think I'm possessed.
Disclosure Day. Going into this movie, I was hoping that it would surprise me. And it did. The first thing that I want to point out about this movie is that it made me think. That line about people not having faith in other people dug deep, to say the least. Also, I like that this movie doesn't try to prove that God isn't real. Instead, it claims that God created the aliens in this movie. Also, there were some really tense scenes, like the ones where the villain is basically puppeteering one of the characters, and said character thinks they're being possessed. However, there are also the typical funny moments you expect from a Spielberg movie, which don't clash with the darker moments. And also, that Snow White scene was very vibrant and amazing. Lastly, the ending was very thought-provoking, and a satisfying bookend to this story. Granted, the characters aren't that deep. Also, the villain just becomes easier and easier to defeat. But still, this was great.
He was some sort of weird red slow creature. He wasn't a real person at all. Persons have bones, hearts, and anuses in them.
Animorphs. I'm going to talk about the show in another video, so stay tuned.
Who made that man a gunner?
I did, sir. He's my cousin.
Oh, Supergirl 2026. It's a darn shame the girl who played Supergirl had to go make a fool of herself, because this movie is awesome! I like how Kara is portrayed. I like how Clark is portrayed as the awkward but well-meaning parental figure. Also, I like that Kara tries to teach Ruthie, whatever, the girl, not to seek revenge. Lobo is the best character, acted to perfection by Jason Momoa, who is much more well cast here than as Aquaman, even if that portrayal of Aquaman grew on me over time. Lastly, the movie is funny. My only issues are that the girl is forgettable, and the villain is just
Flowers are dead, violets are blue. Give me a gun, I'm ending it.
Dead Poets Society. Another movie I was banking on being the 10 out of 10 movie of the month, and man, is this movie sad, but fun at the same time. I love the bond Mr. Keeling forms with his students. There are several relatable moments. The ending is very sad, but very great. However, I don't understand why Mr. Keeling never found out about the boys' club. And also, the dad character is annoying, but not unnecessary. The parents of one of the kids are much more sympathetic than the ones in Holdovers, as you could tell they just genuinely do not understand, rather than them being selfish pricks.
No, ever since I was a kid, I pledged that by the time I'm 17, I would own a pumpkin. I'm 23 now, and I've gotten nothing done over the past 6 years because it's been at the top of my to-do list. Let's get this over with.
I'm sorry, I wanted to use this jingle for so long and it fits so well, but here's another jingle.
As your mayor, I know it's time to put our sardine canning past behind us and look to the future. Sardine tourism!
Anywho, Jaws. The movie I put off for way too long. And boy, was I missing out, because this movie is spectacular. I like the main three heroes. The movie is just the right amount of dark but never going overboard. The mayor is a freaking idiot, even if he is the most realistic character in the movie. I love the climax, and it's amazing every step of the way. My only issue is that I wish the movie was a little bit longer with a bit more build-up, but still fantastic. And to think, this is not the number one on this list, as that goes to...
I'm Batman. Batman, where are the drugs at?
Batman, the Animated Series. I was completely blown away from this series. This is one of the best cartoons I have ever watched, as there's not a single bad or mediocre episode the entire season. I love how Batman and Bruce Wayne feel distinct from each other. And also there are so many recognizable actors like Tom Wilson, Ed Dillinger himself, David Warner, and even Adam West. My favorite of these episodes was probably the Clock King episode, as it turns a pretty campy villain into a pretty scary antagonist. Also, there's another episode where a civilian is basically used as a pawn by the Joker, but ends up almost becoming the Joker's undoing when he finally stands up to him. It was definitely an inspiring episode. Overall, it is amazing. And that's all for this month. See you next time with another video, which will hopefully be done by the end of this month. See you then.